of rural Indian households own livestock, and there are close to 80 million dairy farming households, and of which there are estimated 71% of these who actually manage the livestock, care for them, feed them, provide water for them, and milk them as well, and eventually also go and supply milk to the collection centers. 71% of women are actually engaged in the everyday management of livestock. um, and because dairy is, it's a high value product that provides even a higher level of livelihood security for farmers, livestock is a really rapidly growing asset class in India. the the number of animals in India, or the size of the herds that farmers want to keep, is increasing because farmers themselves see that there is a greater possibility of livestock, delivering better returns to them. So as and Deepika mentioned that production stands to increase, and dairy consumption in India is also projected to increase 38% in the coming decade. But climate change really poses an existential threat to help us achieve this goal. And a recent report that was published, I think, by the World Resources Institute, suggested that rising temperatures in India threaten to reduce milk production by as much as 25% in the next 3 decades. So how can farmers adapt to protect dietary, economic, as well as livelihood security? Now, we're all well aware of methane being the second most abundant greenhouse gas after carbon dioxide, and it's also 28 times more powerful than carbon dioxide for warming the atmosphere. While we know that approximately 50% of methane emissions globally are due to human activities, and these being largely from agriculture, India is, when we look at it relatively, India is the world's fourth largest methane emitter after China, US, and Russia. But Deepika mentioned this point, and which is very valid, and perhaps it reinforces every thought, every conversation, every time we think about methane, and per capita emissions are low. And and there is the lived reality, the political economy, of the fact that we have a larger proportion of small marginal dairy holder farmers who own uh, limited number of animals. And so therefore we're not talking about the big commercial dairy farms as we see in the US or in Europe or in Australia, for that matter. This is really a question of farmers owning 2 or 3 heads of cattle. So despite India, as I mentioned, we are the fourth largest methane emitter, but we have the world's largest, which is, when we really think about, we have taken great strides, great attempts of becoming the world's largest milk producer. And this is a significant accomplishment of organizations like the National Dairy Development Board, of the hundreds of cooperatives, milk marketing federations, of millions of workers who are working on the ground to actually help aggregate farmers and get them together. But the fact of the matter remains that while we produce 40% more milk than the country, let's say the US, which is the second highest milk producer, we do that with 300% more cows. And there is a certain level of inefficiency in the way we manage our livestock, whether it's feed or whether it's water, and even sometimes when you think about it in terms of the final product, which is milk. So agriculture, and here the 1% of the total methane emissions. And in fact, one statistic that's a little startling is that agriculture contributes more methane, or emits more methane, rather 4 times more methane than India's energy sector. So this is, therefore, ag, which includes farm as well as livestock, gets a lot of attention and focus in terms of perhaps this is a priority area where we need to work on. And just looking at it in terms of the priority area, there have been multiple initiatives underway with the intent of trying to reduce methane across different sectors in the ag space. One is, of course, looking at livestock methane emissions, where there have been multiple attempts to look at how do we manage manure better, how do we feed our cattle better so that we can, we can actually bring about a reduction in yield optimized emissions. And when we look at paddy, for instance, rice cultivation, there have been different experiments going on when it comes to, whether it's direct seeded rice or something else, so we can bring down the level of methane emissions from our rice cultivation. And then, of course, lastly is waste management, where again, the government of India, and there have been several organizations that are really looking at ways in which energy into wealth, the bio-CNG or other sorts of, capturing gases so that we can reduce the level of emissions from the landfill space. But all of these require, all of these interventions require significant technology, social support, as well as financial support. And I hope that the discussants who are going to come after me will really try and bring up some of the more nuances of what does this mean in the Indian context? What does technology support mean when it comes to methane? What does social support mean when it comes to, looking or trying to address some of the challenges when it comes to methane emissions? And also looking at, in a sense, the biggest, I think, piece of the puzzle here, and this is where everyone talks about, is that who's going to fund some of this? Where are we going to get the money that's really going to come and help a lot of, as I mentioned, the 80 million farming households in India actually make better choices, better decisions, better actions, better practices at the farm level. So I think with that, hopefully I've been able to provide a sort of very quick and large overview of the sector. And thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to the discussion ahead.
Thank you, Nikhil.
Thank you, Nikhil. You're setting the scene for the methane challenge from the dairy industry sector. Now, I have a very important panelists this afternoon. As you know, time is limited, and without wasting time, I will call upon Dr. Rakesh Kumar, who is Officer in Charge Special Duties CSIR Headquarters and former Director NERI. And he will be giving us the real dimensions about the social and the behavioral issues related to this methane, I should say, conundrum that we are facing and trying to dissect and understand. Dr. Rakesh Kumar.
Thank you, Professor Vasne. It's been a real pleasure to be speaking with you on a panel on a very important topic. And I would try to digress a little bit and then come back to the agri and livestock sector. When we start looking at methane per se, I don't want to talk about the numbers which Nikhil mentioned it, and there are many other who talk about it, how much India emits, what it is doing, whether it's doing politically right or technically right. Those are different issues altogether, and we should actually avoid in this discussion that we want to have. The main thing I was wanting to highlight is the opportunities that we have. And if we are not dealing with it, then methane, if it goes out in atmosphere, it is not only that it's doing greenhouse gas related activity of warming the planet, but in local level, we are also creating ground level ozone. We are creating hazardous air pollutants because of the reaction that it has with other pollutant that we have. So we also are creating a lot of health issues. So if we are able to manage methane, whether it's coming from oil and gas sector, waste sector, transportation, agriculture, livestock, you name it, and any source which is giving us methane, we need to worry about and we need to do something about it. So that was one part which I thought is important. The second part is how do we do it? How do we create opportunities? And that's where we are looking at that if we can capture the methane which is going out in atmosphere and we convert into energy form, we are actually replacing all the other fuel related energy that we are getting it. We could have a replacement coming from there. So when we talk about waste sector, it's very common thing which we all know. We have a lot of methane emission which takes place, but we are unable to capture all of them, and then use it as a source of energy in our sector. So when we look at agriculture and livestock, it's the same thing. We have resources which is giving us. I was very glad to hear this, that India is a significant I would say milk producing country compared to many other countries as well. But yes, we are doing it with large number of livestock comparatively. So how do we deal with methane producing the cow dung that comes, right? So traditionally we have to also worry about and note down that we have certain tools and techniques where we are dealing with these as energy sources. So some places, except the dairies, I would say, people dry it immediately after you get it. You convert it into a dry form, and then it becomes solid fuel. Of course, there is an issue of solid fuel being burnt and therefore air pollution related thing. So that's where the research component comes. Can we do some kind of gasification using the cow dung so that we emit less when we want to use it in a dry form? When it is in wet form, why not we recover that methane and then we use it in our system for energy generation? So there is an opportunity for all of us to do a lot of research, and those are research which are small research. We are not talking about something in the sense that we have to spend too much of resources and time to get that result. So this is very important that India, with large population, which lives in villages, which has the right sources of methane generating material, can be converted into useful material so that the per capita emission reduces. And that is what will give livelihood, the employment, as well as the benefit that we are looking at from the point of view of reducing greenhouse gas category, as we call it, methane, as we discuss here. So, Professor Vasne, I'll stop here and I'll come back again because it's a panel discussion. We need to be short.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh Kumar, for telling us that there is a ample opportunity of exploring the area and also to provide technical solutions to the problem in an innovative way to handle the problem of methane. I'm happy to announce that Dr. J.S. Sharma, Director of the ICCSA, is available now, and I would request him to give his introductory remark, which we are waiting for before we proceed to the next distinguished speaker of our panel.
Thank you, sir. I apologize for joining late. Actually, there was some connectivity problem, and I was traveling from one place to another. So I only say I do not know. So Dr. Rakesh must have given already introductory remark. I am not aware.
No, I have not. We are all waiting for your introductory remark.
Okay,
I
okay.
gave my own remark.
Okay. In the month of November, we had a curtain raiser program of the climate goals, which was inaugurated by the Mr. Gadkari, Nitin Gadkari ji, the Ministry of Transport. And there we have announced to conduct the 5 such events. One was oil and gas. Second one is this agriculture and livestock. Then the waste of energy, then transport, and like this. We want to conduct 5 in different places. So this was one, and oil and gas already over. It was conducted in Ahmedabad. It was conducted in Ahmedabad. Now the next one on 1st of January, it is being proposed to be conducted at Guwahati. So through this event, it was the program to freeze the certain points so we can, in a structured form, come out with some kind of recommendations and how the methane can be captured. Methane is known for the most potent gas than the carbon dioxide, which can warm planet 86 times over a period of 100 years or so. So methane is to be considered a very important greenhouse gas, which is not being given the kind of importance we should give it. So livestock is today's point of discussion. I think the methane, as Dr. Rakesh has said, methane has to be recovered by any means. Ministry of Petroleum has also come out a program on biogas, and they are setting some large-scale biogas plant in different states. So with this, I stop here. I'll join again. Thank you very much, sir. And Professor Vash is one of our mentor and everything. And he is guiding us, and he will conduct this session, and he will be in Guwahati also to summarize the things. Right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for your encouraging remarks and setting the genesis of this activity that you have undertaken, which I find to be very, very vital for the Indian economy and for the rural setting. Now, our next speaker on the list is Dr. R.D. Gupta. Do we have Dr. R.D. Gupta? Senior General Manager of National Dairy Development Board, Anand.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. R.O. Gupta from NDDB, National Dairy Development Board.
Right. Welcome, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the for including us. And I have with me my colleague, Mr. Niranjan and Dr. Bhupendra also.
Welcome, welcome.
So already, thank you very much, Mr. Nikhil, for setting the agenda and giving the introductory remarks. And so I will not repeat those things which are already discussed in this by the previous speakers. So what we feel is that since the subject is related to how can we capture or how can we reduce methane emission from the livestock. So from the positive note, we would like to apprise this forum with the activities that NDDB has been implementing to address this issue. So basically, as we know, methane emission is based. So in terms of the milk production, we understand that and there has been discussion that the animals, the livestock, the bovines that we have, the productivity of these animals are very low. Majority of them are nondescript animals. So the primary focus that we have been working on our activity around increasing the genetic potential of these animals, basically to work on this genetic front, improving their genetic potential for milk production. So we have been, as we know that there are large number of India, we are having more than 300 million if you take cattle and buffaloes. So, and large number of them are the nondescript, which produce very less amount of milk. So our focus is on increasing the productivity, and to increase the productivity, and there are about 50 known breeds, indigenous breeds in the country. So basically, we have been implementing some genetic improvement programs. We are implementing progeny testing projects. At presently, we are implementing 24 projects in different parts of the country through the livestock development boards, through the cooperatives, or through some trusts, wherein individual breed, we are primarily focusing on the male breed, and for these breeds, we are trying to identify the best of the animals in these for those breeds, and these animals we call them elite animals, and these elite animals. See, basically, if you have to do any genetic improvement program, you know that we need to identify best of the females in the population, and these females we are breeding with best of the best of the bulls, with best of the seed available, so that the next progeny that comes is better than the previous progeny. And this progeny testing program, basically, the program is meant to produce the bulls which are going to the semen station. There are about 60 semen stations in the country, and these 60 semen stations, they produce about 120 million semen doses, which are used for artificial insemination. So basically, we are trying to produce best of the bulls for each of these breeds, and these bulls, which are genetically superior bull, they go to the semen stations, and so far we have replaced almost 60% of the bulls at the semen stations. And this 60% of the bulls, now when these bulls are used for semen production, the next progeny that is coming up is going to be better than, and that's what is the process which majority of countries have for the improvement program. So this is one part on the genetic part. To access program further, we are also supplementing it with the use of in vitro fertilization or the sex semen. Use of sex semen. These are other two things which are being used, and the government of India is also implementing these schemes through Rashtriya Gokul Mission and providing some support for the farmers to adopt these programs. The second line is whatever animals are available, so improve their productivity is to balance their ration. So as rightly Mr. Nikhil has also mentioned that they are not properly managed. We know that in India, in Indian dairy sector is basically it's not a commercial production. It's basically the livelihood, and the dairy system it sets on basically feeding of the crop residue. Large whatever crop residues are available, like wheat straw or rice straw or the strawers or the chuni or the some cakes. These are basically used to convert into the milk, the human feed. That's what is the and there are very few commercial productions. So basically, and when you use this type of these are often imbalanced food, and they result in production of more. Is the ration balancing program, wherein we have trained large number of we call them LRP, that is local resource persons. So these local resource persons are basically the 10th or 12th class pass boy in the villages, and they have been trained on the ration balancing activity. We have developed a program which is called a ration balancing program. We have an application, we called it INA, Information Network for Animal Productivity and Health. So we have a ration balancing program in this, wherein these boys, they go to they go to the villages, they go to the farmer, they try to understand what feed ingredients are available with the farmer, and using those feed ingredients, what is the right way and what is the approximate weight of that animal, what is the stage of lactation or the reproductive status. Based on that, this data is entered into the system, and then system provides them and about what are other ingredients available with the provides them that ingredients in what proportion they need to mix it so that it becomes a balanced ration, and if required, some part of mineral mixture or other some ingredients can be mixed in it, so to form a balanced ration. So when the ration balancing is done, basically, so it not only improves the production of the animal, but it also helps in reducing. We have estimated that it helps in reducing 13% of the methane emission per animal. That's what we have worked out. So so in terms of feeding, this ration balancing is one activity that we have been implementing. Besides that, we are also promoting fodder activities. In fodder activities, we have been distributing the mowers and balers to basically to gather the crop residue. So if these crop residues are not gathered, basically they are burnt and they cause more damage to the soil as well as to the environment. So we promote these balers and mowers, and these the crop residues which are thus gathered, they can be used for the dry TMR plants. We have established two dry TMR plants. One is in Kolhapur in Maharashtra, and another one is in Hanumangarh in Rajasthan. These two places, and they have been successfully producing a very low cost feed using this which is otherwise get burnt and damages the environment. The third important that we have been implementing is basically the total mixed ration. We know that in developed countries, the TMR is the most adopted feeding system that they have been using, because they have the TMR wagon comes and it distributes to all the animals. But it's very difficult. We all know that how efficient the system is, but we are unable to find out the module that can be really implemented in the small experiments, and we have done it. And now it's possible that we can provide the packed TMR to the farmer's doorstep. So we are very soon we are going to start this in some pockets to demonstrate that this can be done. And by using total mixed ration, you can again increase the productivity of the animal, as well as you can it helps in reduction of the methane emission. Besides that, yeah, the third important point, that aspect that we have been working on, is the manure management. So basically, what we have done is in some in Anand, in some nearby villages, we had a couple of villages when providing them the small gas, flexi biogas in their backyard to the farmers having just 2-3 animals. And this is a very small 2 cubic meter plants, and it costs something around 24,000, wherein they get some 50% subsidy, and it costs only hardly 10 to 12,000 rupees. And that helps in increasing, I mean, their dependence on the cylinder or the gas. Don't need to purchase, and it's able to it's sufficient for family of members. And basically, and after this, so they are able to put this which is
So I think the connectivity is lost.
I think there is some hang up.
yeah, probably it got disconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please
Yeah.
continue.
So yeah, so these small flexi biogas, basically, it's not only helping to reduce their dependence on the gas, helping them save the money. It's the additional income to them, and it is also saving the environment. And then the slurry that is produced out of this slurry is also used as a organic fertilizers, either by the farmer. Besides that, we have also formed some the women cooperative in the area, and they purchase this slurry from the farmer, and this slurry is converted into this organic liquid manure, which is sold out also. And the dry part of it is also used to produce fertilizers. These are all the activities that we have been implementing in the dairy sector.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for telling us the 3 major lines of activity for improving the productivity, as well as for reducing methane emission and the management of the solid waste or the manure or the cow dung or the cattle dung by providing small size manageable biogas plants, which are very useful in extracting the energy for the domestic use, as well as for providing slurry, which serves as an organic fertilizer, an organic manure for the farmers, for which there also seems to be a demand, as you say that it is being sold at certain price. So I think these are 3 important lines of contribution that are being pursued. And now I think we have next on our panel is, so thank you with that for the information and for updating us on the activity of National Dairy Development Board in this regard. We have our distinguished another panelist, Dr. Claudia Aren from the Senior Scientist Institute of Livestock Research at Nairobi, which is a very famous international institute working very seriously on many dimensions of dairy development, and has many important publications also which have come out from this institute about the management of the methane issue as well. And we are eager to hear from her the current activity and her own vision about methane management from the dairy sector.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. So at ILRI, I'm leading the Mazangira Center. The Mazangira Center is a laboratory that is built to measure greenhouse gas emissions of livestock and other environmental impact. So we are actually able to measure enteric emissions using chambers. For small and large ruminants, we have 3 for each of them. We also measure manure emissions from manure heaps, from pasture. And we also have actually, Dr. R. Gupta was talking about flexi biogas. We just got, we're upgrading our biogas facility right now to actually also do experiments and measurements from biogas. What we've been doing in the past is we've been working mostly on baselining to actually help African inventories to move to tier 2 inventory. From what I understand, India has already been moved to tier 2 inventories, which is really good actually. And now we're still helping to move to tier 2, but we're also working more on mitigation. And actually my strategy now, I'm here since 2 years, is I want to work more on also looking at mitigation at the same time as baselining, because we don't have time to just do baselining. We do need to actually know what the effects of these different strategies are. And I think actually what Dr. R. Gupta outlined were a lot of important strategies that we're also looking at. And the thing is that we actually need to determine quantify what the effects of these strategies are in means of increasing production and also in reducing emission intensity mostly. So that's where we are working a lot on, and we're working with the Kenyan government, for example, on currently we have collected activity data from farms to look at strategies that they have been promoting to their smallholder dairy farmers to reduce emissions. And like to honestly say, it's very much in line with what has been brought up there. It's reproduction, so it's breeding and AI, manure management, including biogas. So looking at feed processing, so better feed management and feeding, feed preservation, making hay, silages to get through the dry season and make sure that the cows don't lose weight. Also make sure that we actually keep them in a good nutritional status, that we can get them pregnant again, because we want the cows to continue for another lactation. But also health treatments. I think we haven't talked about health yet. So health interventions is also very important, from udder health to other prevalent diseases that you may have in India. Pasture interventions, and also what has been mentioned before is the use of byproducts and improving the use of byproducts. And also, of course, feed formulation. And what I find, at least here in Kenya, breeds have already been a lot like improved for the smallholders. And the smallholders we're talking about are mostly in the uplands, so more in a tropical, humid area. They mostly the biggest problem I see, honestly, is feed and feeding, and making sure we get sufficient feeds. And in the lowlands as well, I don't know, you probably have heard Kenya has been going through long droughts. Lots of animals have been lost, and like whole identities have been basically lost, and farmers are devastated because they can't feed their cattle anymore. Even ILRI ourselves on our range land, we lost 300 animals last month because we didn't have enough feed. And because of the drought, it rained a little bit, there was a little bit of pasture, and then the sun came and all the pasture was burned again. So even we are struggling, not just the farmers, right? That's how bad certain areas here in Kenya are. The highlands are a little bit better because it's more humid, so there's more feed, but they are also limited. And another aspect we're working on, we have social scientists, so thinking of different approaches of scaling, because you've been talking about how many small dairy farmers you have, and that's the majority of your producers. So we're looking into different possibilities and how these strategies can be scaled by training farmers. But I think you're already doing this, like making farmers trainers of farmers and so on, and taking responsibility for the community and trying, like, being passionate about training their peers to make the community itself getting better. We're also looking at farmers that do things differently. A colleague of mine is doing this. She looks at pioneer farmers, which are positive deviance farmers. So they're farmers that do something a little bit better, not better, different, and get higher productivity, for example. So we look, because these are things that are already on the ground. So the assumption is if farmers are already doing it, it's most likely profitable, and it may be easier to scale it through farmer education. So we also think that this is very important. And yeah, with that, I want to close it. Our lab is a lot of, like, actually intensive measurements, and what we do, what can be helpful for you. But I think you have a lot of the skills already, like for soil measurements, emission measurements, and for manure measurements, we can do trainings and things. We have equipment that can be sent out. Yeah, so that's what we do here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving us a good rundown of the activities of your institute, which to my mind are working in many different directions to really attack the question of dairy improvement, dairy conservation, as well as for pasture improvement. Now, as long as the drought does not leave you, I think the question of dairy development and cattle improvement and conservation remains a very major issue. So along with this, we have two issues. One is of dealing with the impending drought, which can come anytime, anywhere, for any length of time. And the second is that once we have a good time, then how do we manage the methane emission, and also keep the interest alive of the farmer in dairy cultivation and dairy industry. So I think these are very important points that you have made. And the most important point is the accurate measurement, so that the baselines are set, so that any intervention can be properly evaluated, quantified, and then its viability and its wider application can be evaluated in a practical and a ground level in a significant way. So thank you very much for your input and giving us an idea of the activities of the internationally reputed institute at Nairobi on this aspect. Thank you. So I think we have the panelists who have given us the various dimensions of the issue related to the dairy sector and the methane issue related to it, which are very, very important. And now I think the floor is open for questions from our panelists. So I invite questions from the floor on issues which are left or which need more emphasis in relation to this activity of methane emission from the cattle ranching and the cattle improvement and so on. So any questions?
I have a question for Dr.
Yeah, Nikhil, come on.
Yeah. So you know, while there is a considerable amount of focus on measurements and on finding out the right solutions for smallholder farmers, you know, when we talk about methane and livestock, one of the most critical things is that you're actually dealing with behavioral change, right? You're trying to get farmers to do things better or differently. So could you maybe, you know, from your experience, talk about some of like what are the things that are the most critical to actually help facilitate, to make sure at least you're on the right track when it comes to doing behavioral change? Because just if I were to give you an example, when it comes to like oil and gas or coal, and when we think about those other sectors, you're dealing with like a handful of players, right? 20, 30 people that you have to talk to. But when it comes to agriculture and livestock, suddenly the number seems so daunting. And each of these households have their own peculiarities, their own lived experiences, their own challenges. And so how do you sort of like start working towards that direction? I know it's a very loaded question. I'm sorry about that, but maybe from my experience, just a couple of pointers to maybe just push us in the right direction.
I think
So
this is
this
very
is-
important. This is very important what you have raised, that how do we really go to a large clientele which is distributed in various places, perhaps even in non-accessible areas, and also which do not have enough means to really know the information well in time. And I would only say that the expansion of internet and the AI is one such tool which can really approach individually to people who are living far and wide, which otherwise was not conceivable, let's say 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I think this is one thing which our reach is going to expand and expand very successfully. This is number one. Second, Nikhil, I think that some other colleagues from the audience may throw some light, that how do we make a solution which is not merely acceptable, but becomes highly desirable by them to adopt. Now, this is an issue which perhaps you are trying to say, that how do we make an issue desirable so that they hang for it and they are really going to eagerly adopt it and stay with it and improve upon with further innovation. So I think any comments on that, I would invite anybody who can really throw some light.
Actually, we were looking forward to Dr. Gupta to be sharing a little bit more information when it comes to that liquid manure that he talked about.
Yes.
It's a very interesting thing. Farmers are doing it, but it's also very messy. And that's where what Nikhil was talking about. How do you look at behavioral aspect of it? When you use chemical fertilizer, is so much more easier. Of course, it's expensive and it's very difficult to get it in the rural areas where people are very poor. But in this whole fertilizer related thing, which is coming from the cow dung in a liquid form, I saw some places where farmers were not willing to pick it up. So what are the challenges which Dr. Gupta, if he has some experience and some
Yeah.
idea about how are they dealing with it on the ground?
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, I will request my colleague, Mr. Niranjan. He is coordinating that.
I'll try to explain. Even I'll address what Nikhil wants to say. I think, and then I'll come to sir, you also, and specifically talked about how we are trying to address the liquid manure challenge. But first of all, Nikhil, what you want to say is how do we actually incentivize? It's all about incentivizing. In Indian conditions, you cannot address the challenges by enforcing something. It has to be incentivized. In our case, if it's a large number of farmers, the more you incentivize, actually the change will happen. I'll give you an example of biogas plants. The biogas plants, if you actually go to a farmer and you explain farmer it's important for the climate change to be reduced, you have to install a biogas plant. The biogas plant is not going to get installed. But if it's actually, if you can ensure that they understand that their clean cooking need is getting satisfied by the biogas plants, and then there is something called as slurry, which is actually going to create an additional income for them, and that income actually is shown or is experienced, then you have to just go on installing biogas plants. The change will happen automatically. But then you cannot go on telling them about the climate change part of it. That will come eventually. Yes, that's an obvious outcome which will be then even cherished by them also. But at the initial level, you cannot go. So such enforcing will not help, but yes, incentivizing will help. Then I'll elaborate more on the biogas part on which we are working. See, biogas is nothing new. It has been talked about since almost 50, 60 years in India, and there have been mixed responses to biogas plants. Even when we started working on the flexi biogas plants just because we had some inputs that there are challenges with the previous biogas plants also, and then they need some skilled masons also to work with. And that's when we wanted to work on this flexi biogas, and we worked with it. But eventually we also realized biogas plant per se is not the only thing which we can work on. And clean cooking need is not the only need which we need to satisfy. There is something called as slurry. Unless and until we work on the slurry part and then create some incentives around slurry, the biogas itself will not become sustainable. Though financially, economically, there are sustainability angles attached to biogas plants, you can create equations and they satisfy very easily in terms of gas. But if farmers have to use it sustainably, slurry is the key, which we understood. And then even from the climate change or carbon angle also, slurry is very, very important. So they can use the slurry in their own field, but that doesn't happen practically in case of household level biogas plants because slurry keeps piling up. And another thing is slurry application in the agriculture is actually a saving which is not generally realized by the farmer. In Indian context, earnings are appreciated or realized more than the savings. So whatever comes in my pocket, I feel it is more important. And that's when we started working on actually paying for slurry to the farmer. And then the cooperative was organized. There was a processing facility which we established. Procuring slurry. Then how do we procure slurry? So we had the testing parameters established for slurry. We did for slurry also. So we had testing parameters for slurry. We had our rates for slurry. We procured slurry from these farmers, and it was processed. Solids and liquid were separated. From solid, we are manufacturing phosphate-rich organic manure that is alternate to DAP, and we can easily sell it at a lower price than the DAP, even the subsidized DAP. And then the liquid is enriched with micronutrients. It is sold again to the farmers, sold back to the farmers again. Still, there is a large part of liquid which is remaining, but since we are able to separate the liquid with very minimal solid content, it can go into the drips of farmers as it is. So that is also given back to the farmers at some like 20 paisa, 50 paisa as per the market need. So that is how we are able to achieve even the price for this slurry. And then those returns, because it's a cooperative, it goes back. These models, even in case of Guwahati, we are actually implementing the same model now in Guwahati also, and in many other places. So this is how we are looking at it holistically.
Thank you.
Maybe I can also share the example of the implementation issues that we faced when we started implementing the ration. So as I said that we feed the animal because in Indian system we have the feeding system which he has learned from his father or a grandfather, and he thinks whatever he is feeding is the best. And now going and telling him that no, I will tell you how to feed the animal. So it's at first instance it's not acceptable. Number one. Number two, we created these LRPs for providing these balancing advisories. So our thought was that he will go every month and give him the advice on at this point of time with this production, with this milk production, and this how much what combination you should from whatever available. And then over a period of time, this should become a chargeable charge. But it didn't happen. So ultimately, those unions who, but truly speaking, many of the big unions, they realize that this is something which is very much required. Farmers are required to be explained. They are required to be given this, how to feed, what combination, what proportion they should mix. So now those majority of those milk unions, they continue this activity from their own expenditure. It never became a remunerative model. So these are some of the implementation issues.
Thank you. So I think any more issue on which some elaboration is required. Now, with respect to biogas, I have only one or two issues to seek your experience. Who ultimately is responsible for its management, cleaning, refueling, or recharging, and so on? Ultimately, it is the woman folk which gets responsibility of it. And therefore, it's also question then 4 or 5 families are put together, then how do they really systematically as well as cooperatively are agreeing to manage such biogas plants? Because our previous experience at many places shows that their maintenance and their upkeep, as well as their, I should say, retrofitting whenever the drum gets leakage or something like that, becomes a very serious problem. And they become defunct and they just don't work, apart from the issues that have been raised by you. So the question is that the kind of model that you are suggesting, will you give us some number? How many such biogas plants are operating and for how long they have been operating?
Right. We started this initiative almost now 6 years back. And all these biogas plants which we are promoting, these are small capacity biogas plants, 2 cubic meter capacity biogas plants. It's a representative capacity which we have worked out based on the average animal owning households which we have in Indian context, and then the family of as sir told, about 4 to 5 families. So this is how we have worked. It's a uniform mode. They are all household level biogas plants. At the same time, it's not the case that we are not promoting any other type of biogas plants. All other type of biogas plants are also promoted. These typical biogas plants which I am talking about are flexible biogas plants. As of now, in terms of number, we have installed more than 3,000 biogas plants across the country, and it's across the country. Even we have installations in Assam, Sikkim, as far as even southern states also, and even Uttarakhand also. So we have those installations.
Okay. Thanks. So I think
gas production, these are flexible biogas plants because they are fabric, PVC coated fabric, easy to install and easy to maintain. Another who is supplying and installing these biogas plants. So the responsibility is fixed that for 5 years you will actually provide a warranty for these biogas plants. And a 10 years digester warranty also comes with the biogas plants. So we are trying to ensure that yes, they are actually maintained also properly. Important thing which I was trying to again harp on was even the slurry part, because we are trying to monetize this slurry part. The farmer also becomes serious, especially the male member of the family. Yes. For the biogas plant function. So even if it is actually not working for a or then also the family starts complaining about the functioning of biogas plant, which is very much required in case of biogas plant. Many a times the biogas plants becomes defunct and nobody even complains about it, because generally the main member is not worried about what's happening in the kitchen. So
okay, I think we will discuss this later in more detail, but you have given us a good idea. So I think it is time to come to the conclusion, and I must say that very valuable points have been raised, and I'm so grateful to our distinguished participants.
I want to say, sir, one point. If you
please.
Ministry of Petroleum has estimated the potential of compressed biogas about 70 million metric ton. and they have directed oil companies to set up the plant, compressed biogas to be used for sustainable transport. And certain MOUs already has been signed with Adani and other small companies.
Okay. I think that's a very important input to this methane and to encourage the biogas plants, because if that happens, then I think this becomes more institutionalized and becomes more firm and more reasonable for them to manage and also to earn the necessary economic advantage.
Right.
So I think we are at the fag end of our webinar, which has been very important and has thrown up very important issues which need to be looked at. And I will request that all of us continue to really explore this. And I wish to thank Dr. Rakesh, Dr. Gupta, and Dr. Nikhil, and Dr. Claudia for their valuable input and enlightenment that they have provided on this issue of the methane environment and related to the livestock sector. And thank you very much. And also to Dr. Sharma for giving us this platform to really discuss this very important and upcoming issue of methane in the livestock sector, which is going to engage more and more in the coming years in view of its importance, as well as in view of its, I should say, expanding emission of methane, unless we are able to control and contain it in a significant way. So thank you very much. And over to Dr. Sharma.
Sir, so kind of you speaking good words about us and all. And I'm very grateful to all the panelists and especially to the chair, Dr. Professor Vashne, who has spared his valuable time. He's very busy. I'm told that he is busy for that G20 meeting and all that. So yes, I'm really accepting our request to conduct this session and accepting our request to be present in Guwahati. So thank you very much to all, to Dr. Rakesh and Dr. Sengupta ji, I saw his name also, and all the members of the ICSA family. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Right, sir.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.